Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy.
Live Well by user bellumaster. Get to the evacuation pods! Deep explosions shuddered in the space station. The station was one of the hubs of Arco, the mighty combiner. An unfortunate nick with well-boosted orbiting debris knocked out the faulty siding of the bridge, spacing the occupants. Several of the docked pilots panicked, and in their rush to escape, one of them dragged a fueling connector with him. The entire underside of the station lit up. Grav systems were barely keeping up, and the reactor that powered the system was damaged in the resulting explosions and entered a waterfall failure. It was one of the worst hub accidents in Arcalaean history. The 27 occupants of the station, teachers, exchange students, visitors, and families, ran for the evacuation pods, following the Klein that was leading the way. Daniel had studied various emergency procedures, never knowing that he would need to use them. In truth, he was terrified. Stay together! Don't fall behind! Lomi, stay with me! Stay close! One of the beefier aliens was carrying a few others. Hold on to me. Hold tight. Almost there. They approached the evacuation chambers. Daniel peered through the portal window. Worried murmurs ran through those behind him. Yellow and white ran over his scales. For those unaware, the Klein had a tendency to show emotion through the chromatophores in their scales when they lost control. In this case, yellow and white signified fear. Daniel recoiled from the window. Through the portal was raw space. Either the fuel canisters or pressurized gases had caused an explosion and ripped through the chamber. The evacuation pods were no longer an option. What is it? What's happened? He struggled with his emotions, trying to exude confidence and control. They had maybe 10 minutes until the reactor went off, judging by the pulsating of the station. The evacuation chamber is gone. Our only options are to barricade ourselves inside the airtight chamber, or to go to the dock and await rescue. What? No! We're going to die, aren't we? Worry ran through the group. Each manifested in their own ways, save for the two that had no sense of self-preservation. Daniel tried to make the decision quickly. They'd already accepted his judgment call before. Come quickly to the dock. A group this size wouldn't last long in any of the airtight spaces in the hub. Time is of the essence. And again, they were running. Daniel had never run this fast or far in his life, but he didn't want to die. Not like this. He still had thousands of years ahead of him for Klein's sake. Explosions rocked the hub as they ran. A few of them stumbled and fell. Just go. I won't make it. Daniel turned to the offending individual and hauled upwards with all he had, which wasn't much. The Zhen barely moved, a heavy and slow-moving race with a hard carapace and stubby legs. It was clear that the quick movement was taking its toll. Stand and live! Don't throw your life away so easily. It looked at him wearily, then stood. The gravity was starting to go. Daniel gave the Zhen a great push. In normal gravity, it would have done nothing. But now, he could make a difference. Daniel calculated his angles and momentum, utilized his prehensile tail and claws for traction and balance, and helped shepherd the group through the shuddering halls. Within minutes, they were back at the dock. The reactor would go off any time now. They came upon the reception area, and his heart fell. The entrance was caved. The atmosphere-retaining generator was thankfully still intact, but the explosions had rendered the dock unusable. Thick, gnarled metal, warped by incredible temperatures, formed a wall between them and any hope of salvation. Daniel fell to his knees. His mind ran other scenarios as his throbbing muscles and sore body tried to recuperate from the sudden stress, but there were no other options. All the rooms with space gear were only accessible by those that were spaced in the bridge, and there were too many of them to use a single airtight room, and splitting up into separate lockers was a worse idea. They were out of options. The beefy alien spoke up. Mr. Klein, what do we do? Daniel stared ahead, numb. I don't know. There was a moment of silence. Then a low humming interrupted the percussions of the station's reactor. Lines of white appeared on the carved alloys of the dock directly ahead of them. Daniel recognized the spectrum of the burning points. Close your eyes! Turn away! Someone's cutting in! The hum rose to a rumble, and the wall of fused and twisted metal burnt outwards from a focal point. Precisely sliced chunks slammed into the walls all around them in a geometric pattern, avoiding the 8-meter radius that the group stood in. An old scavenger frigate nosed inside the station. The walkway lowered, and a silhouette appeared inside the ship. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. A human. Old, grayed, and not too agile, but a human nonetheless. The old man wore a white dress shirt, suspenders, and black pants. A worn toolkit on a harness hung on his body. Everything would be all right. The human stepped into the reception pad. Anybody else? Daniel flashed red, then remembered the reports and shook his head, side to side for no. Right, I read a life form near the reactor. Get on my ship. When we get back, hit the green button on the pilot's auto panel. With that, the human broke into a quick trot into the bowels of the station. 26 mixed species ran into the safe reaches of the armored frigate. Daniel looked at the ship, then after the human. He chased after the human, who was already out of sight. He didn't know why he was running the wrong way. Maybe it was just to see a human in action, like the footage he'd seen from Miss Ishay's reports. Maybe it was because he didn't want the human to face the danger alone. Or maybe it was because he wanted to help. His body was pushed to its limit, but the lower gravity certainly helped. Somehow, the old male human was outpacing him, even though he was stopping to clear debris as he went. Daniel carefully passed through the still glowing remains of a plasteel support. He was catching up. There, ahead of him, the human was just entering the reactor bay. Daniel braced himself and went in. Gravity throbbed in waves around the room. In their center was a thick, growing canister, pulsing faster and faster. To the left was a bloodied and battered staff member slumped over the control panel. The human took in the situation at a glance and jumped over to the staff member. The being looked to be a young Ragnar, a female judging by her plumage. She looked incredibly hurt, but looked up at them with faded eyes. Get out! The human picked her up. You're coming with us. Using a bio delay? She nodded weakly. Daniel ran over. What do we do? Get her to the ship. I'll delay the explosion. The human plopped her into his arms. He almost fell over. One of the gravity whips hit him, and he did. Daniel struggled to pick her back up and carry her to the hall. How are you going to delay it? He pulled the door from the control panel and stuck a tool inside. She was using a bio delay. Staff only. I'll have to delay it manually. Daniel made it to the door and turned. The pulsating reactor slowed ever so slightly. You've done it! Now, let's go! The old man shook his head at Daniel and smiled. Go on, kid. I can't let go now. Get to my ship and take off. Daniel's mind worked furiously to comprehend what was happening. I don't! What are you doing? Come on, we need to go! No, you need to go. Right now. But, don't talk back. You two alone have far more near futures than I do. And you need to get going. Now. Daniel blinked furiously, and black started to cover his scales. He turned and started to run as best as he could. Okay. Such a pathetic response. It was all he could choke out as he pushed his body to the limit. Even in such low gravity, carrying another being was not something he was built for. The hall was long, and the Ragnar was so heavy, but he couldn't throw away what the human had just given. Daniel ran harder than he thought possible. He stumbled onto the ship and nodded at the others, breathless. Go! The green button was pressed. Metal squealed as the ship withdrew from the station and pulled back. Daniel staggered into the pilot's cockpit and watched as the station quickly receded. The radio crackled to life. Did the other two get on? Daniel's voice broke as he responded. Yes, we're on. Good. Take off. Get in the safe zone. We already are. You didn't need to. I've lived a good life. Tell my wife how it was. She'll understand. The radio went silent for a moment. Live well. Then the reactor went off.
The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, clickety-click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I would just quickly like to give thanks to our Tier 5 members. Alithia, Barky, Feudicuel, Meridian117, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Albard and Gusta, Savage Patch Papa, and Lord Azrakal.